Extension to conditional and converse, there are other logic statements that I want to show you so that you are ready when you take IB Math Studies and you see the full, or if you go to computer programming. It's not just conditional and converse, they are the most popular. So what I'm going to suggest that you do is go to YouTube and search for If Then Banana. We watched it in class. You want to watch it again, and you can follow along and see what the different things are in song form. Basically, though, we're taking our statements and we're just arranging them a little differently. So we still have our P and our Q. So the converse, that's not new. That's if Q then P. So if you play football, then you are a quarterback. Okay? We are not necessarily worried about the truth of that statement or not right now. It's not a true statement. The inverse is negation. And you'll hear that in the song. Inverse is negation. You're negating both of the original statements. So if you are not a QB, so the only thing that's different in the P is the not, then you do not play football. And then the contrapositive is the converse of the inverse. So we switch the inverse around. If you do not play football, then you are not a quarterback. And generally, if you start out with a statement that's true, the contrapositive is always true. Because if you don't play football, then you can't be a quarterback. Okay, so let's go to one that has a little algebra in it. So our P is the equation and our Q is the solution. So the converse, we already knew that. If x equals 5, then 4x plus 8 equals 28. That's a true statement, but it's not always true. You could have another equation. The negation of the original statement, if 4x plus 8 does not equal 28, then x does not equal 5. Again, we're more worried about writing these right now. When you'll do something called truth tables when you do logic to see if they're equivalent or not. And then the contrapositive is the inverse of the converse. So, or the converse of the inverse. So you switch the one you just did around. So if x does not equal 5, then 4x plus 8 does not equal 28. So again, that statement is true because the original statement was true. Pianists are musicians. So you got to first write this as an if-then statement. If someone is a pianist, then they are a musician. So your P is here, your Q is here. So the converse is if someone is a musician, then they are a pianist. Not true. Converse is the one you always got to worry about. Negation, you negate, you keep the order the same as the original. If someone is not a pianist, then they are not a musician. Also not true. And then we do the contrapositive. which is the inverse of this statement. If someone is not a musician, then they are not a pianist, which is a true statement, because if you're not a musician, you can't be a pianist. If you're a pianist, you're a musician. Write your own conditional. Anything you want. I'm gonna write one for geometry. If two angles are congruent, then they are vertical angles. That's true some of the time, not always true. You could have two angles that are adjacent angles that are congruent, but just for our purposes here. So the converse would be if two angles are vertical angles. Notice how I'm abbreviating this. You'll use this later on. Then they are congruent. That statement is true. In this case, the converse is true. The original statement is sometimes true. The negation of the original, if two angles are not congruent, then they are not vertical angles. So we negated the original statement. This would also be true because vertical angles are always congruent. So we know they're not vertical if they're not congruent. And then we reverse the order here. If two angles are not vertical angles, then they are not congruent. This statement would be false, because angles could be not be vertical angles and still be congruent. The reason that one's false is the original statement is false, because you could think of a counterexample. So if you look up some of these things with logic statements, that we have these things called truth tables, which you'll learn about in math studies, that go along with this. We want to expose you to the terminology so it's easier to learn when you have to learn it the next time around. Okay, so you have this filled out. If you didn't do the P and Q part yet on the other side, the rest of that is your homework. And just hopefully you did this part first, but if you didn't get to that yet, you can go back and do it.